This week, the Council of Ministers met with the Coalition of Eight to discuss several issues as we are preparing the Action Program 2016. And I say Action Program because, as you know, when the Governing Accord was signed, we have decided then that we would endorse the coalition governing program of red, white, and blue that was established and written in 2014 for the governing period 2014-2018. However, this government has taken office towards the ending, the 19th of November. And by the time the entire matter of postponing the election was settled with the governor and the signing of the national decree, we basically have 9 months left before the next election. So what the coalition has decided is to to bring about the necessary changes to the governing program, to adopt it rather, not make changes necessarily, but to adopt the governing program, which was a 4-year program, into actually a 9-month action plan. That action plan, when completed, will be, of course, released via the media to the people of St. Martin. One of the things that I discussed and outlined to the Coalition of Eight and to the Council of Ministers was some of my ideas as it pertains to the needed electoral reform to ensure, particularly one of the things that has taken center stage in the whole discussion after the motion of no confidence of September 30th was to address the issue of ship jumping. Why particularly the issue of ship jumping? It's because the government then took a decision to dissolve Parliament because the government felt it was time to put an end to ship jumping. One of the things that I have always publicly stated was that the changes to our electoral law in the manner in which one becomes a member then of the Island Council and now a member of Parliament has a lot to do with the mindset and the mentality of one who is elected. Why I say that? It's because prior to the changes of the law, which were promoted at the time by the late Edgar Lynch, who was Commissioner with responsibility for constitutional affairs at the time, when the law was changed and the system of preferential votes were changed, whereby you are elected based on the amount of votes that you get. So if a party gets 5 seats, the persons with the highest number of seats, votes rather, the one with the most votes gets the first seat. The one with the second highest number of votes gets the second, third, fourth, and fifth seat. What that has created in the parties is a heavy competition between the members of that party, the candidates on the list. It has resulted in some cases where members of the same party criticize each other, sometimes publicly, in order to get the edge one over the other. We have seen in the recent parliamentary election where a recount was requested, and I'm sure there is a picture of one MP raising his hands when the recount resulted in a tie between 2 members of the same party, resulting in the one that was placed higher on the list getting that seat. That has created enormous competition, and there are those who say, well, it's healthy competition and the voice of the people will be heard, but it also brought with it a mentality of, I am going to shop around to see which is the list that would give me the bigger opportunity, the better chances of getting elected. So we have seen members, politicians switch from one party to another, or literally shop around to see where can I be placed on a list that will benefit me most. I have had candidates in 2010 following our 3-0 win at the polls in the parliamentary elections of January 2010, when the National Alliance slate was very strong, but also following the 2010 Island Council elections in September 2010, when some I believe seven of the top 10 vote getters came from the National Alliance slate, that people, politicians, were worried about their ability to get elected on the slate of the National Alliance. So the focus has shifted from what it used to be over the years. You're a team player of a certain political party to becoming now an individual player, because naturally the person wants to get elected, so you look at where are my chances better. And if there is a slate with the leader getting over 1,000 votes, the second getting 700, 800, 900 votes, down to the number 7 candidate getting 300 and 400 votes, a person who is not sure that they will muster more than 150, 200 votes would say, what's in it for me? But if I go over there and with 200 votes, I most likely be the second highest vote getter, then that's the place to be. What happens then, when a government is formed, there is no loyalty really among some of them to the party, to the faction where they have been elected, because they simply used the party platform, the party infrastructure in order to get elected. And once elected, they move on. What you have also had with the ship jumping is the entire electoral system focuses on party. If we look now with the functioning of the electoral council, some of the articles governing the electoral council and the political parties, the ordinance on financing of political parties, the political parties need to be very well organized. If you're not organized based on a certain format, registration is denied. You have to prove how the party raises its funds and how they manage it, how they spend it, what they spend it on. The candidates, the party has to indicate how elections are conducted within the party, when do they organize general meetings, how do they collect dues. So there is a lot of focus and emphasis on a party that caused some of the new parties back then in 2014 as well to complain of the enormous burden that the system places on a party. But lo and behold, as soon as the polls are closed, the only time party is mentioned is during the results. At the end of the night, the Electoral Bureau would announce that X party has gotten 4 seats and that the 4 elected members are Peter, Paul, Mary, and Harry. What happens? De facto, Peter, Paul, Mary, and Harry then become independent members of parliament. That is what they in essence become, because the system allows anybody to move and declare himself independent and form a government. The governor holds consultations with the political leaders, with the party leaders after the election. The parties indicate who they would want to see as the formateur or the informateur, But once the governor gives the assignment to form the government, the governor does not say, form the government based on the political parties or the political factions. The governor says, form a government that relies on a majority support in parliament. So from there, the opening is given for persons to basically jump ship. Because if a faction has 6 seats and that faction wants to be in government, they can shop around for 2 seats anywhere else. So if another party has 5 seats, but you don't really want to work with the party, because then the power might be shared down the middle, 6 and 5, you say, you know what, if I go and I take 2 of the members from that party and create ship jumpers, then we will have 8 and we will then be in government. But lo and behold, which happened in 2014, you had 3 parties that came together, the coalition of red, white, and blue, and on the day of handing in the final report to the governor, 1 member defected, jumped ship, and the coalition of 8 was no longer a coalition. They lost their majority, and someone who did not win a seat, to use the word outright, but had a seat. But someone with about 300 votes, you walk across and you destabilize what would have been a government. A year after, what happens? Not 1, not 2, 3 members pull their support from the government. 2 of them jump ship from their party. The party and the government loses a majority. There is a new majority now known as the coalition of 8. If this seesaw is allowed to continue, and we hope for the sake of the people and for the sake of stability that nothing of the sort happens again, but the possibility is there that any one member walks away and we are back at square one again, a whole new ball game. What have we said? If we hold elections without changing anything, without changing any of these rules, without changing any of these laws, all we are doing is setting the stage for a whole new set of ship jumpers to participate in the operation of ship jumping after the 2016 elections, were they held in February without bringing any changes. What are some of the changes that I'm proposing? The major change is that we change the laws to ensure, or not to ensure, to say basically that the election results establishes how many seats are given to a political party. So if we look at the results of 2014, we would have had 4 parties that won seats. The UP had 7 seats, the National Alliance had 4 seats, DP 2 seats, and the USP 2 seats. So 4 parties had seats. The instruction given by the governor is to form a government that relies on a majority in parliament. We want to change that in that a government has to have support of 1 or more parties representing a majority. Now, why do I emphasize parties? It would mean that a government would have to be formed either between, let's say, the UP and the DP, 9 seats, the UP and USP, 9 seats, the DP and not the DP, the UP and National Alliance, 7 and 4, 11 seats, or the combination red, white, and blue, which would have been 8 seats, or any combination of UP and any 2 or 3 parties that forms a majority. If you do that, if you form a government of, let's say, the 8 seats that represented red, white, and blue, and one leaves, that one cannot, like was in the case of 2014, go and form a government with UP, because the one that leaves is not a party. The government can only be supported and formed by parties. So if the individual leaves for whatever his or her reason may be, that individual becomes an independent member of parliament, but does not constitute a political party. You have been a member of a political party, you have left the political party, so now you are an independent member. Of course, you maintain all your rights and privileges as a member of parliament. You are entitled to, and you're supposed to vote on any issue in parliament, but in terms of lending support for the realization, for the swearing in of a government, the only way a government can be sworn in, that government would have to show that they have support of a majority in parliament, made up of political parties. So if we look at the present situation that we have following the ship jumping that has taken place, the movement from one party to another, right now you would have the same 4 political parties and 4 independent members. So a government, given when we make those changes, the rules would then apply. UP would have 5 seats, the National Alliance still with 4 seats, the DP with 1, USP with 1. The 4 independent members will not be able to come together, let's say the 4 of them, with 4 others to form a government. The government would have to be formed between the 4 political parties. They would have to find a majority. The only majority that would be possible given those rules would then be the UP with 5 seats and the National Alliance with 4 seats. If those 2 parties decide we can't work together, we don't want to work together, then is when an Article 59 would kick in and the government will dissolve Parliament, because the Parliament cannot muster a majority support to form a government. With those changes, I am confident that ship jumping will become something of the past. But even if ship jumping does take place, ship jumpers cannot and will not be rewarded in the formation of a government. So it forces one, if you have a difference of opinion with your party, it forces you to stay there, stay in your party and fight out with your party the differences of opinion that you may have. It also allows one to say, well, I am one of the 8 seats supporting the government. The budget debate is coming up. There are things in the budget that I do not agree with, so I won't vote for the budget. Now, it then forces the government, the coalition of 8, if that is what it is made up of, to seek support from another member, another faction, another party in Parliament to say, listen, boo, we need your support in order to get either this legislation passed, or we need your support to get a budget passed. If that does not happen, the government, while the individual did not withdraw, did not resign from the party, but the individual has a right to vote his conscience. And if his vote results in the government not having a budget, then that government has lost its support and would have to realign the government based on political parties and not on individuals in Parliament. One of the other issues that I have proposed, and the committee that we established will be working out and working on, is an MP that gives up his seat to become a minister. What has often been heard, nobody wants to give up their seat in a certain political party or in certain political parties, because if I give up my seat, and if the government changes, I won't get back my seat. You would also get an awkward situation if the leaders of a political party, and when I say the leaders, those in the top of the party, in the case, for instance, of a national alliance, the leader and deputy leader are the two with the highest amount of votes. They give up their seats to become a minister, and then you can theoretically get a possibility where members with 100, 150, 60, 70 votes, they inherit, they get one of those seats now because the seat had to be given up because of our dualistic system. And then they decide, you know, we are going to jump ship, for instance, and bring about a change in the governing of the country. When we look at the election results, the votes were clearly given to, let's say, number 1 and number 2 and number 3 in a political party. The people have said, those are the ones we want in government, and we have a system that sometimes can be confusing to people, because you run on the list and ask people to vote for me. I will represent you, I will work for you, I will be in government. Now, what is being in government? Is being in government being in parliament, or being in government being in the government, in the Council of Ministers? So here, lo and behold, 3 candidates gave up their seats, representing sometimes as much as 3,000 votes, to go in the Council of Ministers. They gave up their seats, and the persons now who take their seats represent probably 400 votes, less than any one of those 3 who have become ministers. And then they now suddenly decide the fate of the country, or the fate of the governance, the fate of the government. We are proposing a system whereby if, for instance, now William Ireland says, you know what, for whatever the reason is, I no longer want to stay in the Council of Ministers, William Ireland gets his seat back automatically, and the process kicks in within 24 hours after he has taken the decision to return to Parliament. I can also decide I am no longer interested in the Council of Ministers, for whatever the reason may be, and I hang up my gloves and I'll sit it out until the next election. So the person who has gotten the seat that I vacated stays on the seat. It is not compulsory that if I resign, that he will automatically resign. If I indicate that I want to return to Parliament, then there is no argument. We don't want, like with the case of Article 33, where the Constitution says a vote of no confidence results in the minister or the Council of Ministers making their position available, and then we hear, yes, but the Constitution didn't regulate when. So the former Council of Ministers took a month. We don't want here either, for if someone says, I am giving up my seat in the Council of Ministers to return to Parliament, that then it is said that yes, it didn't say when the Member of Parliament who holds the seat, when he has to resign. So these are the 2 main points that we are confident that once implemented will bring about the necessary changes in the political climate, but also in the governance of our country. It will ensure stability. It will restore stability to the parties. My idea initially to reverse what I call the Lynch law, to ensure that someone at the bottom of the list, because he or she has gotten 400 votes, which is way less than half of the value of a seat, for instance, that that person moves up to the top of the list. There are those who feel that the system as created several years ago, and people have grown used to now, is one that stimulates hard work by the candidate. It's like if you want to get elected, then work. And if the people find you at the bottom of the list and give you 500 votes, and the person in the number 2 or the number 1 spot only gets 300 or 450 votes, that the one with 500 is clearly preferred over the one with 4, 3, or 200. So we won't propose any changes to that as long as we can get the necessary change to ensure that the formation of government is done on the basis of political parties. And in closing, we have heard the remark over and over and over that, yes, to make changes to the Constitution, one would require 10 votes, and the coalition of 8 does not have 10 votes. My response to it then and always and today would be, the coalition does not need 10 votes. Parliament has 15 votes. It is not something for the coalition. It is something that is for all of us. And if the UP government invoked Article 59 to bring about, to stop ship jumping, and now the government comes with a proposal that if carried out, if carried by the majority in Parliament, and we hope by all members of Parliament,